Hey, listeners, and welcome to the You Are Epic podcast. This is where we honor the people who've helped build not just our industry, but our communities. I'm Angela Hucker, and I am so glad that you're here. So, I'm taking the time to sit down with people who've been in construction for years, people who've been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between. You're going to hear real stories of resilience, growth, and moments that shaped who they are. This podcast is for those that want to learn more from people who've been walking this path for some time, and they're helping to lift up others and quietly making a difference along the way. It's also to show you that your journey matters and your voice matters. And in case you've forgotten, you are epic. Let's get into it. Okay, so today's guest is Matt Stevens, who is an absolute force in the construction education and business strategy with over 40 years in the industry. Matt's a senior lecturer at Western Sydney University and the author of 4 globally adopted books on construction management. Matt's advised over 100 companies, delivered over 1,000 seminar days, and created 11 productivity apps for contractors. With expertise in strategy, culture, and construction performance, he's on a mission to elevate the industry by sharing real-world insights with the next generation. It's awesome to have you here, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Angela.
So, what we might do to start with is if you would kindly share about how did you get into this space? I'm really curious to understand this.
Well, I mean, you can look at it from both ways. I mean, the nurture nature thing is probably part of it. I mean, the nurture is that I had four older brothers who made me tough, and I certainly wanted to be very independent at a young age, and so I started working for a contractor and doing things that were very physical, and I could do that because I was young, and of course, you're not that brilliant, but I did grow up in an agricultural family, and so that became something easy to do. You're always outdoors, and again, it adopts to construction easily because on a
Yes.
farm you don't get paid a whole lot, but in construction, as we know, it's the third highest paid profession in Australia. It's the fourth highest paid in the United States. So that was easy, and of course, 14 years old, the whole thing, and probably the nurture thing, which I think Angela, you would articulate very well. It's easier for men to be in construction. It's just the culture and the demands, the some of the rituals, which we don't want to talk too much about. But that leads you to say, oh yeah, I could do X and I can do or Y. I'm going to choose Y because Y is more comfortable. Again, my older brothers would agree because they were, that same kind of not that bad, but they were that, they had that culture. And so between both ends, it made it easy for me to be in construction. But I come at it from an unusual space. I've always, my family's been a bunch of writers. We grandfather, great grandfather owned seven newspapers in New England. Uncles and my mother was a writer, and so I write a lot. I wrote the last book
Okay.
I wrote was 929 pages on construction contracting, business management, and so
Wow.
that's I'll give you a little insight here. If you write like 500 words a day, you know what they call you? Lightweight. But if you write 5,000 words a day, they don't call you lightweight. They're quiet. So you write a lot.
Goodness.
That's his culture. So my father was,
Wow.
a little bit of that too. So, but up to the present day, I think what's probably more interesting is that I sense a great bit of our fairness about construction in many ways. And I certainly like young people, and I think that's the path for me. I have built enough to feel satisfied that I'm competent. I was licensed through the state of Florida as a builder. I've done some other things, but came to Australia after a visit, really liked it. Obviously, came back. Julia Gilliard said, we want more PhDs teaching our young people. So as soon as I got my PhD, I applied, and that was a ready yes because there's just not that many people that pursue the
Mm.
PhD. Either you're total industry or you're total something else. And I was lucky to be in the kind of the middle ground about, well, academics got its points, research is pretty important, young people are pretty empowering. So I ended up at getting a PhD and coming to university from the University of Florida. I went over to Melbourne for 4 years, which was a great experience. But I've settled in Sydney, and it probably agrees with me a little bit more, not to cause a controversy, but just a little bit more. And so I'm here happily working at Western Sydney, which has a bit of a practitioner focus, which I think most people in the industry appreciate. So we do some real practical things. I know Angela, I sent over something about a non-gendered hiring profile
Mm,
selection process. It's 64 questions, 8 dimensions. It really gets to the core of, is this person fit for construction? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how tall you are, what gender you
mm,
are, whatever your other factors that we all think are important are. It says this person has the right mentality and some other things for the business. Now, whether they have a year, 100 years of experience or 2 days doesn't matter. We got the good core person. Of course, then the selection is not just that. The selection is other things, but you start with that, you're going to have what we call contributors, and it doesn't matter who they are. A construction contracting owner wants contributors, not people looking for the
mm,
next career move, not looking to somehow get a pay raise they don't deserve. No, they want to contribute, and that's their personality. And if things are badly handled, yeah, they're going to move on. But if you treat them well or
mm.
respectfully and all those things, they're going to stick around for a while because the personality is the characteristics are what really drive that contributory type of person, and it's dependable, right? Because that's the way they're built. Forget about the 5 years of this or the 2 years of that. They're going to stick. They're not unfit or ill-fitted for construction, misaligned in their outlook for construction.
So what's some of those qualities for being a contributor that what you're looking at with part of that creating that app that we've gone through?
Well, we've done a lot of research on it. Part of it is the EQ, right? The emotional quotient. Not that you're some psychologist, but when somebody's upset, you can tell. And obviously, you think ahead to other people. How would she or he perceive that? Is this fair? Long term, am I going to suffer a consequence because I'm being selfish? All
Mm,
these things go into EQ. It's very well defined. And so we've tapped into that knowledge and formalized it. It's pretty difficult to do 64 questions and get 8 dimensions, but we were able to do it through some magic. And I do mean some really smart people and some magical things. I think the core idea is really important. Obviously, we looked at IQ because we want to make sure that
mm,
there's either at level or higher. It doesn't matter. We're still working through a little bit of refinement there because there's a couple things. IQ is a very interesting thing. You can have 100 questions on anything and it'll measure IQ as long as the questions are structured a certain way. You certainly want people that are practical, and we test for that in that same 64 questions. So there's a practicality. So if again, you grew up like I did, you kind of a little more practical, a little more spatially oriented, a little more, thinking about form and function. And then, of course, if you look at, things that are more formalized, like industriousness, which is a well-known personality profile, that they'll just do things. You could be on a
mm.
desert island, you'll be building something just because you're industrious. And then
Yeah.
conscientiousness is this lovely, lovely thing we need for construction, which is double checking. Is it really by the spirit and the letter of the law, right? Or the spirit, the letter of the specification, spirit and letter of the regulation. And so these 8 personality parts are extremely important. One of the dimensions that we measured is honesty, and it actually is in the app. You do more with that, but the app does assess the honesty dimension in a very small way, but it does measure it. And so we all want honesty. Why? Because I don't want to lie to my client. If you tell me it's done, I tell them it's done. We don't
Mm,
get embarrassed. If it's not done, it's kind of done. And I say to
yeah.
somebody, it's done, and they pay me for it. I got a problem, but I didn't cause the problem. My creative employee who, stretches the truth did. So those kinds of things are very important. I think last thing I think I can say about it is that I got with two people of really 50 years experience that I work with. They're very bright. They're also very assertive and very plain spoken. So, if you have fragile feelings, maybe you don't want to hang out with them too much. But they mean it in a good spirit. But we really start talking about the better employee, and then we started talking about the contributory employee. Now, not the person again gaming the system. Every 2 years, I take on a new job. See you later. And so we really distilled this thing down, and we believe in it. Obviously, it selects the right personality. We can argue that very strongly. There is a lot of research behind it
Mm,
from other people that support it, but that non-gender bias has the opportunity to start having a really plain-spoken conversation about. I don't care who you are. I
mm,
care, like we all in construction say, this person works. They work well. They work
mm,
steady. right? They're careful when they're uncertain. They kind of have the right behaviors about what do you think, Angela? I'm confused, you
Mm,
know, and they're not worried too much about. Listen, I haven't done this before. You got to show me a couple times. Those kind of people are golden. And again, with the the way the app measures people, you certainly have folks that are let's call them better than average fit. Now, that doesn't obviously if you're an architect, do not take the assessment. If you're an engineer doing design work, don't take the assessment. It's not going to fit you. It's going to fit a
yeah.
construction contracting employee.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So more targeted at tradespeople, essentially.
actually, no, it's actually the we can go through the dimensions like grit. Grit's in there. So you would say
Mm,
PM or tradesperson got to have grit, practicality. Tradesperson that PM better have some practicality. Otherwise, we're going to be
mm,
frustrated in the field. We have career alignment, which means you're coming in, you've actually have a history of being the same kind of in the same kind of industry for a longer term, right? So you're constantly focused as we know, the more you spend on something, more time you spend on something, the clearer it becomes in your head, the more knowledgeable it becomes. And so those dimensions, let me give you the starkest one is probably the grit one because we just get disappointed so much and we have pressure on us and there is the the weekend the 200-kilometer job we're going to every week and coming
mm.
back and I've been there, you've been there, right? You're driving back thinking about the business you want to start because I can't do this anymore, it's too hard.
Yeah.
That takes grit to stick it out in construction because there is a lot of there is some unfairness, there is some difficulty, there is some stress, there is some there's cultural things in it that are unfair to you. I mean, don't be again, the some of the some of the conversations that you've had in the industry, and you go, yeah, that's just that's not that's you're not talking, doctor patient or
Yeah.
lawyer client. They're very impolite. Those
Mm,
conversations are sweet compared to what kind of conversations we have in construction.
mm.
And you got lots of money involved, and that causes some dynamics that we don't like. And anyway, so that was the one that I think probably take the most pride in because it is the core. If you have those personality pieces in some measure, I promise you, you'd be a good bet. There's lots of potential there. There's a person you could put on a job site or in an office and say, I need you to help me. And that person will have a better than even chance of saying, yeah, I'll take on the challenge. I'd like to work with you. And they'll grow. And again, potential contributor is probably the two things I could say about that.
Yeah.
Very well
No,
needed.
yeah, it's absolutely needed. And there was something that you touched on that I'd love to explore more, which is how it's linked to the productivity. So, how I'm understanding this is that if we can actually find the right people with these skills, rather than actually
Yep.
trying to just get bums on seats, but people
Yep.
who've got these elements who can be that contributor,
Yep.
then that will actually help make a more productive workforce because they've got those skills to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Or,
Yeah.
they have that grit to handle traveling that 200 kilometers. Is that
Yeah.
what the intent is with designing something like this to help with the productivity?
Well, it's a system of systems. I mean, I can go through the whole list, and you'd probably be a little overwhelming. But I mean, another area I've actually published this research where we took a very basic, it's called a DISC personality profile. I don't know if you've
Mm.
heard of it. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've actually asked the question and done the research where we say, what is the best craftsperson? And you use DISC to do it. Okay, and this is all personality. This is not anything else. I'm not checking people's records and doing all. So I'm saying, okay, give us your best 25% of craftspeople. Okay, and I had companies do that. About 17 companies did this. And so we gave them the disc, and we were solving for three attributes. We were solving for lack of rework, which is productive, right? Guys slower, guys steadier, no rework, right? That's a very good
Mm.
guy to have around. The
Mm.
second is that they are safe, very good guy to have around, lady to have around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, tenure. They had to be in the top 25% of length of service with the company. Great personnel because you train them the first day, they're not leaving next month, right? So
Mm.
so we went through this whole thing, and what came down to is if you're familiar with DISC, which D is dominance, I is this individualistic personality, and then S is steadiness or structure, and then C is conscientiousness or critical skill, DISC. You really are solving for a lower than average D. I promise you, this is and a higher than average S. So it's really a
Mm,
steadier person, but not somebody obviously on the D side that's going to be a hothead. They're going to be very, somewhat measured in their personality. They're going to be seeking more information than less information before they make a decision. The eye has to be away from the edges. So it's not doesn't matter too high, too low, but as long as they're not an extreme on either end, they're fine. They might be a little chatty because they've got high eye, or they might be on the C is the same thing. Stay away from the edges. The critical is not that as important as you think. But again,
mm,
if it's high C, low C, but as long as it's not in the top 20% of this or the bottom 20%, you're fine. So what it comes down to is a guy like, and I probably let me ask you this question. You know a lot of people probably like this, that the person is again seeking information more often, not making decisions quickly, asking lots of questions, and then also
mm,
they just have this system that they've invented themselves by themselves. It's their thing, but they have a system of the way they work. And you as the manager are going, what do you need? And they go, I need this, and you work with their system, and all of a sudden they're very productive, quality's high.
mm,
People that are that low D, right, and that high S, right?
mm.
And you would say if I could clone them, I would, something like that, right? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where research gets real exciting because you sit there and you take two people with 50 years of experience and myself who's got some, and then other people in the room, and you say, what are we really solving for here? We're solving for the person, right? And the
Mm,
person is going to be consistent in their personality, whether it's on this 8 dimensions or just selecting field people. Don't, as you know, there's going to be a time when there's two or three people looking for jobs with good craft skills.
mm,
You're looking for one. You got to have this ready to go. When they
mm,
walk through the door, the three of them kind of over the next, couple weeks, you want to really pick the guy with that personality that says,
yeah.
I'm going to stay longer, I'm going to have less rework, and I'm going to be pretty safe. And so
Yeah.
each of the people in the study actually were in the top quartile you know, of safety, right? So if you talk about 100 people, you're not talking about 25, you're talking about 20 or 19 because, a couple of them are less safe and a couple of them are less or have rework. So it's a very simple exercise, and I'm just surprised that we don't have more studies on that. I've been frankly wondering a little bit why we aren't as practical in academia as I think we should be, and say,
Mm.
listen, we got the resources to the research, we can get it replicated, we can, we got all this computing stuff, and
Mm.
I don't know what the answer is, but I'm certainly chasing it.
And I think it's from my experience of the industry, it's a lot of the lessons learned aren't being captured.
No,
And
that's
that's where it's like this systemic pattern of mistake after mistake keeps
yeah,
happening because the lessons aren't being
yeah,
they're just not being captured to go, okay, what have we learned from this? What can we do? Like what you've created with this, what sort of people or what sort of qualities do we need with people that we're attracting, and particularly
yeah,
because there is such a focus now
yeah,
to get more people into the industry because there's such a skill shortage. But
hmm,
it's kind of like you need to find the right people. It's not just like I said before, it's not
yeah,
about just getting the bums on the seats. It's about you need people who, can stick it out. And traditionally, people who did a trade, let's say the 70s and the 80s and stuff,
yeah,
they've stuck it out long term because they're getting to that age now where they're at that retirement age.
yeah,
And that's where we've now got this gap because the new generations coming through have a different mindset with how they actually want their work life being designed as well. And I'm ex-FIFO and I did the 28-day rosters, 4 and 1 and 12-hour shifts and all of that sort of stuff. 1 day off in 28, and it's just the generation now they want that work-life balance, and it's
yeah,
I'd love to hear more from your side about how can we find that with what you're creating and the work that you're doing to be able to get this next generation into the industry based on the skills that they've got, but also based on, perhaps the what the industry requirements are as well with how the industry actually operates. Because there's a big shift happening at the
yeah,
moment. It's like a bit of a volcano happening where the two
yeah.
the two plates are meeting and about to
Yeah.
erupt. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, again, this is all from research, so I'm not talking too much ad hoc or contemporaneously, not thinking through this. So we point to two primary things. One's on the developer or project owner side is that you have to very much calculate what that time span needed is for that quality project. It can't be just, well, I need
Mm,
to get it in the market by January of 2026. That absolutely is not what we want. We want a we have an out we're beginning the we've got it fairly well along actually algorithm that says, okay, what is the in the 300-mile radius, what's the available workers, right? You have to say that. You have to say, now if you want a
mm,
quality project, Mr. Project Owner, you do want to know that there's people available in that area that you're
mm.
building within 300 kilometers, I promise you, right?
Yeah.
For cost and things like that. And then of course you talk about complexity of design. Well, the whole idea is that you sit there and say, this project should take about 24 months to build it with quality and good social outcomes, which means people aren't going to the pub every night because they're tired and they're mad and they're not doing things, later because they're frustrated with their life and they're nihilists,
Mm,
the suicide thing. And we want people to come here and obviously work in a way that there's very productive, which means they're not doing it at 6 o'clock in the morning and they're not doing it at 12 o'clock at night. And
mm,
we have to say that's just a reality. We're just not going to have a ready bunch of contractors willing to work with us as project owners if we're going to be saying, again, here's a job that should take 24 months. Let's build in a 16. That has too
mm.
many. It has we actually distilled it to 10 dysfunctions. That was the name of the paper.
Oh yeah.
But it was an actual honest assessment of saying everybody's got to take a piece of this, including the
Yeah.
project owners. Don't go 16 months when it should be 24. Maybe we do it
Yes.
22, but we definitely don't do it at 18 or 16. And you can, intuitively, and what's interesting is that that's research has never been done before. That algorithm's
Yeah.
never been published. And
Yes.
it's like, why wouldn't it be? Well, let's just be honest about it. We know a lot of people, construction people don't complain, right? They just do it. One day in 28, yeah, that's a pretty rough and tumble, kind of attitude. Everybody goes, yeah, that's pretty good, but that's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
especially with the pipeline of projects that there are as well. Like I read it was last week, the Infrastructure Australia report came out, and it's, the first time we've hit $1 trillion worth of projects
yeah,
in the pipeline.
yeah,
And it's, when you look at the percentage of those which are going to be in that regional and rural area and
yeah,
the workforce that's going to be needed for that,
yeah.
what sort of shifts have you seen over the years with the research that you've done with how projects are being done and deliverables and the things that you've touched on from a project owner's perspective as well? Like what sort of considerations there and the shifts over the years that you've seen?
Well, the government, and I'm not being critical of the government, but they definitely have under-resourced the infrastructure, and we see that a little bit. Again, there's not a criticism, a little bit in the housing costs, because if you have
Mm,
infrastructure going way out, that the houses are going to be less expensive and more accessible. Again, 100 kilometers out from Sydney,
mm,
and why, and we're trying to catch up on that. We're trying to have that little more of that spread, I think. And I come from the United States, so we're thinking about this too, and we're going through it. So
mm.
we have to have the infrastructure being built. We just
Yes.
if we're going to make this place affordable and have certain equity in the end, where it's not, the guy with the father with the house, he gets the house kind of thing. And, that guy's set for life, where somebody else comes in and, they're first time home buyer, first resident in Australia. We
Yeah.
got to have some place for them to go where it's, equity building. So the housing and the infrastructure are somewhat interrelated. It's not a hard correlation, but there's an effect there.
Mm,
Um, I think that you've got to be clear about some of the contracting methods. So decreasing the amount of contract variation as far as the contracts are different. That has to be more dovetailed, right? So you want this risk sharing to be equitable.
mm,
The government's very good about managing its contracts in light of changes and fairness. They're very good about that. And again, I'm not critical of the government. Um, they the question is always, how do we get more of this stuff done, again, with quality and durability,
mm,
the 40-year design, the 80-year design kind of stuff. That's a hard one, but I really I'm a beneficiary of the tunnels and everything else in Sydney and other places in Melbourne that are infrastructure related. I've really been amazed how well we do it. We do it well. Now, does somebody complain about the price tag? Yeah, but we're working all sorts of different ways. But again, I would say bring the number of contract types down to a smaller number. Maybe that's from 5 to 4 or 20 to 15, whatever. Try to bring the language in line with each other. You certainly have a very comfortable wage scale, and because the work is hard, and the work
Mm.
and people don't do it when they're 55, right? We know we gotta, like dumb example, but you're just a footy player, man. You're going to be good for about 5, 10 years, then you're going to wear out. Well, you're good for 20 or 25 years, then you're going to wear out. We got to pay for that. That's why we pay people the way we do. That's why we're the third highest paid profession in Australia.
Mm.
So to get to the young people, the next generation, I mean, obviously, we have to have a more systematized way of contracting. And so the information confirmation and collection at the front of the job is the missing link. That you gotta be the project owner and the merely the project owner furnishing everything, having everything ready to go to a very high level, saying we really have this figured out. We know what we want. It's not a mystery. We've done checks and double checks. Okay, here's a fully vetted DA. Here's a fully vetted construction plan or program. But some of that is, well, it's good enough. Let's get it done. I'm in a different business. I really don't know construction as well as a project owner, but I'm pretty good, right? And then we have this frustration with the builders and subcontractors saying, "What do you want exactly? Not what do you want? What do you want exactly?" Because it's $400 for that, but it's $300 for this. Which one do
Mm.
you want? And there's a big difference in the cost to me.
Mm.
I wish I knew that before we even bid the job, kind of thing. So this confirmed information, believe me, is the largest risk a contractor takes on, and it causes the most conflict within the project team. It builds confidence when it's very, very good, and the project team is rocking. It destroys the team because there's cost involved, right? There's rework involved, and rework, as we know, it costs 3 times
Funny.
more than the original estimate. And so again, you're talking about somebody's finances, which in construction, I promise you, is a different issue than if you own a coffee shop. Why?
Yeah.
Because you have personal guarantees to the banks and the suppliers. You got two people that they don't want you to go bankrupt. They would do it, but when you do, they got we call it dibs. Whatever, you got a claim on somebody's
Pause.
house, or and
Yeah.
it's like a country music song, right? It's like you lose your truck, you lose your house, you lose your partner, you lose your dog because the dog and the partner go away. And
And
it's
you've
very,
got nothing left.
yeah. And when we talk about it, and in the school, again, I'm a little more of a practitioner, so I tell them, listen, you can have a personal guarantee, and it's not, this is not play, this is not practice, this is the game.
Mm.
And so we go through, the little bit of reality check, and this is why your boss might yell at you once in a while,
Mm.
even though he's never yelled at you before. Because it's his house. It's his
Yeah.
superannuation. It's his, yeah.
Everything that's on the line. But that's exactly right. And that whole director's guarantees and director's undertaking and everything like that, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's just not a good space to be in when you're putting everything on the line
Yeah.
like that as a
Yeah.
director. So,
And again, you're wondering why the price tag might be a little bit more. That's why the price tag is a little bit more, okay? Because we're not doing it for 5% profit. We're putting something. If this goes well, we're going to do okay. But man, we're putting everything on the line. Yeah.
well, it's interesting what you just said there with the profit, because I know from dealing with contractors, and I do a lot of contract reviews for SMEs who
Mm,
work on larger projects with tier ones and stuff. And the margins now are incredibly tight. We're talking like
mm,
2 and 3%,
mm.
with the hope that then there'll be variations that can
Yeah,
come in, but it doesn't give any room. And it comes back to this risk allocation that you mentioned about, because everyone's kind of putting the screws on the whole way down the chain.
yes.
And, everyone's being told, well, what can you do here and how can you sharpen that and what can you do with that?
Right.
And what are you seeing in that space with the construction management side from your research?
Well, the interesting thing is and you know this, there's a wide variation between the top quartile contractors and the bottom quartile contractors.
Mm.
And I'll use some numbers here, and you're not going to believe me, but I'll tell you them anyway. If you look at the financial outcomes between the top quartile and the bottom quartile, and this is banking data, so this is very well vetted, don't lie to me kind of data, right? So people have to submit their income tax returns and their, their audited financial reports to get credit lines and things like that. It's between 250 and 1600% difference. So if and that's in the numbers, and I've shared the numbers on LinkedIn saying, guys, listen, if you're going to complain about contractors, you're talking about the bottom quartile. You're talking about the bottom 25% that are doing things you say are terrible. Never hear that about the top quartile. In fact, the
No.
top quartile is not talking to you and saying, "Hey, we're doing fine, fine. You know, how's your day?" They're not telling you they're making money. They're not having their folks go to association meetings. They're not, being parts of case studies with academics. They don't.
Mm,
And I wouldn't do it either. I wouldn't say a thing. I'd say, "Hey, it's a life. I wouldn't get into it if I were you." But of course, they're doing better than average. The people in the top quartile are smoking it, right? But they're not saying anything, and you will not hear them say anything. So
mm.
that's the first thing to get over. So the question, I got off the subject a little bit, but the question was the difference between the contractors or what they're doing to increase their, what's the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was more about that risk allocation with, how they're going in early in the piece with that 2 and 3% margin and on the hope of getting variations as they go
Oh
through,
yeah,
but how they're managing that risk allocation from when they're being awarded contract and then it gets passed down the chain to all the lower tier
yeah.
contractors as well.
Yeah, the primary metric is the numbers of prices they give out a week. So they're saying they're going to hit 15% of their bids, but they're not bidding two a week, they're bidding 10 a week. So
Mm,
if you look at just lots of at bats, right? You're going to say I'm not a very good hitter, but I'll get my share, and so I don't have to say yes to everything. So,
mm,
so contractors that don't have the ability to estimate a lot, again, put out 10 a week, let's say that that's the number, 40 a month. They're going to have to take, they're going to have the conversation about, the job they bid last week, the only job they bid last week, or the only job they
mm,
bid last month. And that's an extreme, and it's not true. But in my experience, and this has been through the consulting work and the industry work, is that when you raise the number of prices, the number of jobs you bid, you'll be able to raise your margins, and that's been
mm,
well documented. Said differently, if you're a big time contractor and you're saying I'm worried about my backlog, you're going to have a special projects division to say, listen, we got to have places for people to go because these big jobs are not going to come smoothly. There'll be
yeah,
one this week, there'll be one next year.
yeah,
What do I do in between? And so they have to have this strategy of saying, estimating is where it all starts, or tendering is where it all starts.
absolutely.
Um, and so, you've got to automate that a little bit. You obviously have to have a system. You obviously have a great craft skill because people want you. They're calling you and saying, come here and do it again. We trust you. And you are trustworthy. And
Mm,
again, this top quartile has that in spades. They are bidding more. They are having small projects divisions and big projects divisions or whatever their size project is. For anybody else who's not thinking in terms of a large company, I mean, just select the number of people that you can manage well and you feel comfortable with. Let's say it's 10, right? It's just 10, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're a little contractor." Yeah, I guess I am. But your margins are well because we know when 10 people work together over 5 years continuously because we're a family, we're going to
mm,
really be efficient.
yeah.
Now, when the projects, when there's many, many projects on the horizon, the economy is really hot, we just raise our price to hit our 15%, right? But when it gets tight, we're small enough to say, yeah, I can do another job, this small job, smaller job, at 8% or 2% or whatever it is. But I caution you, and the data is clear about this, is that we have rarely, if ever, in the last 40 years had a reduction in the number of contractors in Australia. All right, it's always been
Even
either the same number or more. And it's
Okay, that's
because,
interesting. So even with what's happened in the last couple of years with the amount that have gone into administration and
yep,
bankruptcy and
yep,
closed their doors and stuff.
yep,
Wow.
we're up to half a million. No,
Interesting.
it's the company goes bankrupt, the owner's got his head eggs, but the two project managers get together and the two site
Yeah.
managers get together, and you got two companies coming out of one. And
Yeah.
that's a story that you've heard, I know, 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that company, we loved them, but we moved on. Or they went bankrupt and we came out of there. Of course, we didn't have any personal guarantees as project managers, so and we weren't
Yeah.
going to sit around and whine about it.
Yeah.
So we had this constant rise. And so when you look at the number of construction organizations by ABS, it's 500,000 right now. It's the most it's ever been. and
Wow.
and it's hyper competition, and so again you're getting this crushing um, pressure on people saying, can you do better, can you do better? Well, if you don't have 14 other jobs bid that you can say, not so fast, no, I can't do that, and I can't do this, and I get a couple yeses over here on the other 14, I'm
Mm.
good. Everybody's busy. I've got some cash flow and some margin coming in. Life's good. I don't have to have every big job that comes down the way and say yes to everything. But again,
Mm.
it's the front end that's setting it up for success. Obviously, you have to be a very good contractor with highly, you know, it's just brilliant, people that work for you. That
Mm.
they're just good. They work it semi-independently. They just
Mm.
yeah
It comes back to that productivity, doesn't it? So
yeah
it always
yeah
lends to productivity.
yeah. Let me give you the way to look at it. And this is going to be controversial, but I think that this will people will nod their head. If you look at the just two words, productivity and production, I'm saying they're misunderstood. Now, people may not say may agree with me, but let me explain why I say that. Productivity is input output. Productivity is I put this much money in the project between my labor, equipment, materials, service, subcontractors, and energy. And that's the Clems model. That's the international model. It's not too academic. It makes sense. Um, and I have this better than average output, and it's 12% better than the input, right? And I say, oh, that's pretty good, right? And then I have this thing called production, right? And production is it's done. So I'm an owner. I say I want it done by next year, January 2026. And I'm not answering the phone, and I'm, kind of saying, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But, very light-handed. But the thing's done with, a little bit of stress on everybody because I didn't answer all the questions. And I go,
Yeah.
hey, where is it? I'm not in the construction business. You are. And so that productivity production conflict is the greatest conflict in construction. The subcontractors have to have it to stay in business. They have to have the input output work for them. The builders, the enlightened ones, the top quartile ones say, yeah, we need productivity. We need the subcontractors when they get on the site, they get a lot of work done. I benefit with my schedule. They're still working for the same contract amount they have, but the enlightened project owners are the ones that say, yeah, I need to have productivity on my job and have all my stuff figured out. Now, let me just take the reverse of that. We have the unorganized project owner who's distracted by his manufacturing business and doesn't really care, but just, I mean, he cares, but he doesn't or she doesn't care. And then we have the distracted or the old school builder that says, hey, read your contract, you be on the job, more metal, more
Oh,
people.
that's
And
good.
so you get this bifurcation of these guys have it figured out and they keep rocking along. And these guys or ladies maybe have a different attitude that's called production. So you look at a job where people aren't getting productivity, obviously, it's called kicking rocks, right? People are, there's 12 guys out there like you asked for, but they don't have anything to do, or things are
Mm.
they're shambolic. Well, that's the greatest conflict in construction. You get the productivity on a job site as the number one focus, I promise you, there's a lot more togetherness there. And subcontractors are asking you as a builder, hey, what's your next job? Hey, can we look at it? It's good. And the
Mm.
same thing with the enlightened project owner. And so we have to just, if I had a magic wand, I'd say there's only one word in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. It's called productivity. Production is somewhere else. So maybe we take it out like a
Yeah.
cuss word.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
more production. It's all productivity.
And I know that's a big focus, in the industry at the moment is the productivity because the
Yeah.
productivity is the lowest it's ever been as well. So
Well, let me can I push back on that politely?
please, yes,
All
of
right, so
course.
if you take the Clem's productivity measure by ABS, and I think we all trust ABS for being consistent in its measures. Maybe we sometimes say, they don't really know much about construction, but they're consistent when they measure. We have the highest productivity gain since 1996 of four goods producing industries. And the four goods producing industries is the way I say, and other people that are smarter than me say we ought to compare construction to. So we don't want to compare construction to, a financial services firm or a coffee shop or a retail store. Oh, look what they're doing. Why don't we do that? Um, what we do is we compare them to manufacturing, We compare us to agriculture, forest, and fishing. We compare us to mining, oil, and gas. And
Mm.
so if you look at those four since 96, we've actually doubled our productivity, our total productivity with all these factors, which we don't have as many people on the job site as we used to because we have more machines and they're better and stronger. And we're smarter material and all that. The complexity has risen. We know our buildings are much more, let's call it more interestingly designed today than they were 30 years ago. So the complexity's risen.
Yes.
And so this CLEMS productivity measure takes into account this complexity.
Mm.
And so we've seen this rise. And again, if you look at manufacturing, manufacturing's been fairly flat. It's productivity.
Okay.
It's actually the worst of the four. Manufacturing, let me go to agriculture, forest, and fishing. That's been a pretty good story, but again, it's up about probably 40%. I posted the data. Um, and then this whole thing about the about mining, which is a great industry as far as profits. I mean, it's got huge margins.
Yeah.
Digging dirt, pretty exciting stuff. And we got the highest productivity of the, and it's not uncontested. Nobody's ever contested it, and it's
Mm.
more like you guys look at one, not you guys, but people look maybe at this or that other neighbor or say, oh, you guys are so unproductive. Why don't you do it this way or that way? Believe me, you've got a lot of upstream problems. People want custom designs. Nobody wants the same house as their neighbors. Nobody wants the same
Yeah.
office building look as somebody else. Things
Yeah.
are different on the ground. We have a huge amount of custom work we do. And let's, modularity is needed and we should do a little bit more of it. But boy, it's always that upstream that says, hey, listen, don't make this look like anybody else. This is the Louvre. We're not doing it like anybody else, right? This
Mm.
is my commercial building has to be different to sell to people that want to occupy it, or my apartment building, whatever, or my house, or my things like that. So it's a custom business, many ways that is unfairly assumed to have some really heavy duty opportunity for modularity. It does have some, but not as much as people think. I don't think. So that's a
Mm.
that's a, more of an assertion. I can tell you why more, but we have a lot to talk about as far as our productivity, not our production.
Product,
Right? We just need
not
more house
production,
builders.
not
More house
production.
builders.
Always about productivity. No, because there's a lot of focus on the productivity at the moment, and I know the John Davies from the CEO of the ACA talks about this a fair bit as well.
Yeah.
How can we make the industry more productive? So that's why it
Well,
was
the numbers are there that we are highly productive. We just don't have enough contractors at the high end to build more houses. I mean, if we took the number of home builders in New South Wales, where I'm from, it's like 22,000. We need 44,000.
mm,
Well, why don't we have
double.
44,000 rock'em sock'em home builders? And I don't know. And I suspect some reasons. But if you did that, all of a sudden your production would be tremendous because
Mm,
people have really figured out how to build a house well, with customization, per the basics and the other the Green Star. They really have. They've really worked at it and they've gotten paid for it. So the healthiness of the industry is there. It's just who wants to be a contractor? Right? Everybody wants to be somebody else.
yeah.
I don't know why, but
And I think like my part in the industry is doing the contracts management. And I know some of the difficulties I had to navigate with that, particularly with handling progress claims and
mhm,
payments and variations and all the stuff that happens with a contract and stuff. And like I've seen some pretty not great situations in my time of poor contract management as well. And then, this is where people holding out payments as well for SMEs, and that makes it quite difficult with cash
yes,
flow and all.
yes.
There's so many factors to it, which, I'm sure you're across all of it with the research that you do. So yeah, as part
Yeah, some
of
of it's updated by I'm working with a contractor now on his agentic AI, and it's a really interesting. We're really trying to bring him into a systemized approach. Said differently, he's a small contractor, definitely good heart. People trust him instantaneously almost. His work speaks for itself, but it'll kill him. So we're trying to do a little bit more on the systemization side and say, here's the very bottom line way to look at systemization. If you're into this kind of thing, you really want to spend more time negotiating less
Mm,
time doing clerical work. Because when you're negotiating with a client about a variation or a final contract price, or let's trade this out, you're going to make your 5,000 bucks a minute, right? Because you're going to say yes or no, or
mm,
let's do something different. But that's where the money's made. We know that, right? We know some money's made, but not a lot in ticking the box and doing this thing. Obviously, I'm not saying safety. Safety is, I wish everybody was coached every single day about their safety inadequacies and things were different on that. But when we talk about the business itself, it is about being in a position, in a high value position where you can really drive that financial ending to a good result. Again, being ethical, moral, legal, all the
mm.
things you need to be. But if that's all systematized and well, and there's tripwires and claymore mines and everything where people don't do the wrong thing, then I think you've got a good system. So I don't know. Some of my I'm still active in the advising role, but it's somewhat modest. It's more fun, and I do kind of I do kind of like the stories of people, like I
Yeah.
think you do. And yeah.
You would have heard some very interesting stories in your time, no doubt,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, the business itself is it's a key to our quality of life in Australia, and there's a lot of misinformation about construction contractors, and I'm here to fight that a little bit. We are a very unusual industry because we do not have when we talk about the four goods producing industries, we're the only one that does not have we do not own the product that we produce.
No.
The mining guys do. The manufacturers obviously do.
Yep.
The forest fishing guys, well, God owns it, if I can say that, before we harvest it, but
Yeah.
somebody else owns it, right? And
Yes.
so and so we go through this whole thing about the customization. These it's a human enabled business and all these, it's custom material every single job. And we still come out as this highly productive industry. And that's a testament to a lot of contractors who are very entrepreneurial, very practical, and still doing well. The industry is not dead. It's actually still a very good place to be.
Mm.
If we can make it less stressful and a little more fair on the ends between the
Yeah.
contracts and the project time setting, again, give me the proper way in which to execute that. I think
Yeah.
we've got a better
Yeah.
way to do it. One of the other things, if I can add this real quickly, is one of the biggest challenges. It's always been this is the portfolio management of the 5 or 6 jobs that you as the owner are managing, right? You've got 4 or 5 project managers managing 5 or 6 projects. You don't know where the next problem is. You have to have a system, which is what we're working on, to actually manage that portfolio.
Mm.
So there are less surprises, and there's very specific things to do that actually raise productivity. I can give you one of them or two of them if you're interested.
Please. Yeah. Love to hear
Okay,
it.
so one of the easiest things is you just list out all the tasks that you need to do on a job, and so this is a multi-party task, right? So your PMs do this, office managers do that, and you set dates on there and the whole thing. And companies have done this, and it's been a really interesting experiment methodology. But basically, what happens is you start the job first things first, right? Number two is to, by somebody else, the office manager, or sign the contracts. Number three, whatever. All right, and you go through, it's like 150 or so. Well, what we found is this was my PhD was when we had high compliance or high adherence to those practices, they were done on time or earlier. For every 1% that was done on time or earlier, every time we measured it, it was a 2% increase in efficiency. The efficiency
Okay.
being overhead to direct cost, which is, for a dollar of overhead or general administrative cost, I drive more money through the business.
Mm.
Yes, that 1% compliance to 2% increase in efficiency is really interesting because why? Because the adherence average we found with a bunch of companies that I found, I'm responsible for it, was about 60%. It was done on time or earlier. And the reason for that is obviously there's not information coming all the time from the designer, from the project owner. Maybe the subs every once in a while needed to give us something and we didn't get it on time, like submittals and other things. But if you can obviously get that adherence up, which the
Mm.
highest I've ever seen is 91% in a company, very,
Wow.
very well organized company. Yeah, the guy was a
Wow.
teacher, at heart, was an electrical guy in the trade. Just he could be harsh, he could be charming as heck. he was nothing worked, and he would do some big numbers. I promise you, some big
Okay.
numbers.
Yeah.
Um, but he had that really intuitive sense that said, yeah, we need to have the same set of practices for every single job. Now, oh, it's a small job. Well, we just put NA there because it's a small job and it doesn't have, certain things about crew loading and certain, procurement procedures because it's just a little job. We're going to do it in 2 days. And they would run the portfolio between the small and large. But getting back to the point, if you look at the extremes of this idea, what you find is that the highly disorganized, ugly projects, you would say, what's the cause there? People aren't doing the work in a timely fashion. The managers aren't getting the submittals approved. They haven't secured the scaffolding guy yet. They haven't, done the safety review, on time. And so that's really the extreme. And of course, the beautiful ones, the guys they're always doing their next management task, the next thing on the list. No, I'm not getting another cup of coffee. I'm doing this. So we had this client that actually uh, he had one of our graduates. This is about 4 years ago. I've known him for a long time, and I was from being in Australia. I've known him actually before I came over. And he said, that guy that, yeah, you had a graduate of ours, like this again 4 years ago. He said, yeah, he said he had the highest adherence of any of our project managers. Guys was 23 years old. He's a young project manager, little
Wow.
jobs. Like he had the highest adherence of anybody that we ever had. He said we promoted him because, man, it wasn't another cup of coffee. It was like, what's the next? Oh, I got to get that budget done. Got to get that budget done. Got to get that
Yeah.
budget perfect.
Yeah.
And so the dynamics of that are many. Any best practice in the industry has multiple positive ripple effects. So just think of it this way. One is that you have a clear enunciation of what the practice is, whatever that is, a budget thing, right? And it's written out longhand, and but it's a click, um, and you make people actually click. You don't click it, they click it, because if they click it and it's not true, and you find out, there's one conversation you're going to have.
Yeah.
You lied to me. We don't do that. That's why we measure honesty, right?
Yeah.
The thing, right?
Yeah.
You're honest. Okay. And so you've got that ripple effect of having standardized practices. And then the second thing is if somebody's a day late on something, you as the owner know it, you go to them and say, what's going on? And there's not a long story. You say, well, you got to get it done today. Yesterday was the deadline. And it's just a little thing, right? It's like whatever. But that gets done not 3 weeks later, but that day or that
Mm.
first day late, right? And so you go through all these things about what are the multiple ripple effects about this best practice, and that's my assertion to the industry is that that's how you tell. You can't do the quantitative analysis of 3 years and say, yeah, this practice really, really, really works quantitatively. No, intuitively that it has this effect, that effect, helps this, all that. I mean, the honesty thing is a great effect, right? Don't lie to the owner. Did you
Yeah.
do it? No, sir, I didn't do it. Okay, why? Okay, what are we gonna do here? I'll get it done
Yeah.
tonight. Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, don't lie to the owner. That's a great effect. And then, or fib or bend the truth. And so your jobs are very organized. The two effects of that, in my experience, this is going to be funny. Is one is that in companies like this company I was talking about, this anonymous company, the owner didn't know the guy's name very well. Like who? And then he found out he was highly compliant. He says, who's that guy again? Oh, it's this guy. Oh, okay. Kept an eye on him after that because he was very high. Like everything was done early, 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 early. And it was done well because it wasn't pushed back by the next guy. So, no, you didn't do it right.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was he had a guy that was probably a kilo or two overweight, a little louder than maybe the rest of us, a little more confident than the rest of us. That guy quit in 6 months. Why? Because he's being
Mm.
tracked. You didn't do
Yeah.
that. This is your job. I don't want to hear the stories. I don't. I want
Yeah.
to see. And so he quit, and that's real typical of my experience. And it disciplines the firm. And you say, I gained insight into a very dependable employee I didn't know before. He really emphasized it to me because I
Mm.
see it, right? Do your job. And then I also had an employee self-select that they weren't really into it, which is good.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
everybody liked him.
Yeah. But to me, this is vital because the way my head's operating now is that it's like you're setting a standard. So you're setting a standard and you're providing clarity as to what
Yeah,
that standard is. And that's
yeah,
a big missing piece I
yeah,
find in the
yeah,
industry because the standard isn't being set and people don't have that clarity.
yeah. Yeah, and the interesting thing to this also is that you end up having a way in which to measure a contractor by a indirect non-financial means. So you say, do you
Mm,
guys track your compliance to management practices? No. Well, that tells you something, right? We have to trust this guy. We don't monitor him closely. You're not micromanaging. You're just saying we need to do everything
mm,
orderly. And if there's a problem, I see it as the owner, right? And so you end up having a way in which to measure and of course if they do measure it then you ask them, okay, let me see it and all that as an owner, and you say, guys are highly compliant, they're very disciplined and organized. This is the kind of guy that I know if we have some tremendously bad if event in a some bad weather, their guys going to get back on track. They're very disciplined. They again, they have a system. They've really thought through this. They're true to the system. They trust the process of, hey, first things first, second things second, the whole thing.
mm,
So these are things that these upper quartile companies that have this very large difference in financial performance do, but
mm.
they'll never tell you. No, we don't. No, I talked to a couple of them in class. The young people. I go, hey, you work for a company? Yeah. I say, how are they doing? I say, do this. They go, yeah, they do this. Yeah. And I
So
go,
could you share who some of those upper quartile companies
no, no, no,
are?
no, 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 no.
You got my
It's a
curiosity peaked here.
yeah. No, no, it's I mean there's a couple that are top name companies that you've heard before, and then there's everybody else that goes, we're just contractors. Um, so anyway, there's a lot more. We do a lot of I team up with people, do a lot of I have outputs. I counted them up. There are like 116 outputs since I've been here at Western Sydney because I'm a writer and I'm a researcher and I really take this stuff serious. I get excited. Um, and so there's other things we get into, but if productivity is your, is the big focus. I mean, there's a very simple things to do. I mean, one of the things if I can pull this out is here's the book of banking data, right? I've got a copy of it. Why do I have a copy of it? Because I'm telling you, you think you're doing well and you're in the bottom quartile and you read this. I mean, that's the, I don't know what religious reference I can make about that, but you do change your outlook on life. You say, that's possible?
Yeah,
That
okay.
I promise you. And this, again, this is not made up stuff. This is just strictly off the servers off these major banks, and
Okay.
they want to know, in the consolidated industry because they don't have enough confidence. But if you've got 30,000 data points over there and 80,000 data points over there, and I've got 30 to 5,000, I want all that data in here. And of course, the suppliers love it because they can
Mm,
really assess this guy is above average. He's in the top quartile. Yeah, we can give him a couple more bucks on his credit line. So
mm,
this all works. If you did that in Australia, it's aggregated, so and it's anonymized. So you would end up having that very risky bottom quartile changes behavior mostly, I promise you, and saying we don't need to try to grow this thing. We need to go ahead and get our numbers up here, maybe at the same volume.
yeah.
And so yeah, so there's a real structural things you could do that are it's probably more political will than anything or more change of the industry. Maybe some people just have to get comfortable with it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, there's so many things, isn't there? There's so many, which I'm very grateful that there's someone like you, like looking at all these different parts and, doing the
Yeah.
consulting and advising and creating all these incredible apps and everything that you're doing. So with your awesome history that you've got within this space, what's probably one of the things that you're most proud of?
Just being a good industry guy, just trying to
Mm,
plainly speak to people, and they can take it or leave it. But there's people out there that appreciate the fact that you say something like agentic AI, and then they ask you later, and they're really excited later. I mean, if you look at agentic AI right now and the things we're doing with it, you know how many pieces of software you need to run a construction firm?
27, one.
I promise you, it might take 6 months to a year,
Yeah, okay.
but I promise you. Because you're going to start with the information collection and confirmation over here, right? You're going to bring it into the collaborative planning, right?
Mm,
That's just a system. And then you go in and of course, you're going to have some things like you obviously have to have a test crew on a job every time you start a new task. Don't need to put the whole crew out there,
mm,
right? You need to have replanning. You need to have collaborative, resource allocation. We've got it all
mm.
mapped out. and then you come over here and you redeploy on the next portfolio, the next job. But you will get to a point where people will not have 27, they'll have one. I
Mm.
promise you. And it's because you can connect. We were doing it with spreadsheets, but we want to
Yeah.
do it with the agentic AI, and we're getting there. And part of
Yeah.
what you saw with the hiring pieces on the very front end, at the
Yes.
back end, which I didn't send to you, was it's a financial assessment tool.
Okay.
You ever heard of something? This is an old measure, but I'm proud of it because it's really exact. Um, it's um, it's called oh God, now I'm forgetting it. Z score. You ever heard of a Z score?
I have not.
No, it's a 1980s kind of vintage
Okay.
thing. No, a Z-score is a single score that takes everything, including cash flow, profitability, productivity, and brings it down to one number. And if you're at three or above, you have a low probability of bankruptcy or financial problems. You get into 2.7, you're getting higher. You get below 2.7 to 2.5, 2.3, and it's very exact. And it comes from your financial statement. And so if you can say you put it together and you say just be honest with yourself, don't worry about us, we're not capturing the
Mm.
data, and they go through and they say, hey, my Z score is 3.5, is that good? That's you doing great, you're doing
Mm.
really, you're getting up in that top quartile. But if you're at like 2 3, I go, man, you better just time out and do things. Well, that's what you're solving for in
Mm.
construction. I mean, I hate to say it, it's not solving for the beautiful building because you don't want to be bankrupt with a beautiful building. You want
No.
to be profitable with the ugly building
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the mediocre, whatever. But
Mm.
you are solving for your wealth and your independence as an older person. I'll
Yeah.
speak for myself only. And so that's why that's there. And then the front end stuff is there. The information collection confirmation stuff is there. So we're chasing it, and I'm having lots of really interesting conversations. I tend to be an open book, as you can tell,
Yeah.
because I want this thing to work. I want this thing to be farther along. I think there's a lot of darn good people that are suffering in the industry needlessly because there's not people kind of giving them first principles and this is
Yeah.
what you can do, or here's an option, or here's two options. They choose, but they know there's a couple options. Yeah.
Well, whatever we can do to support, please let us know. Here to help, and we're
Yeah.
all about making positive change as well. So, whatever we can do from our side, more than happy to do that. But look, in closing, I think what I'd love to hear, Matt, is if there was one piece of advice that you want to share with someone in the industry, what would that be?
Have great craft skill. And if you want to have a construction business, have great craft skill and obviously be savvy about business. But
Mm,
you got great craft skill. There's 100 people looking for you right now. They'll hire
yeah,
you right now.
yeah,
You got a job. Get out of bed, ring the doorbell, $60 kind of stuff, right? Because you're that good. They're
mm,
they're they're rare. Um, and so if I look at the journey I would take, obviously lots of field experience is what's going to make you the better professional.
mm,
Not the school stuff as much. I need school stuff's important, but you know, going to school and being in the field at the same time, like we have a lot of students in Western Sydney do that. They really come out with a very strong background. They
mm,
have some management understanding, obviously have, but they also have a understanding of the work ethic and the culture and the way that we want to handle things that are highly technical and problematic and time sensitive. But yeah, it'd be develop your craft skill first, your understanding of craft skill. Be knowledgeable, be able to see that's quality work, that's not quality work. That's a quality process of installation. That's not a quality process of installation. I
mm.
can tell the difference.
Yeah. And
That's
the
what everybody
client will
wants
tell the
is the
difference.
quality. Yeah.
Yeah. And the client will tell a difference. If they're getting something that's custom built, they want that quality with the custom build job that they're getting as well.
Yeah.
So
And they'll call you back in 30 years and say, are you still in business? I
yeah.
have a couple of friends like that. People ask, hey, they're still friends with the first clients they ever had because their quality
Yeah.
was high.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. No, that's awesome. So thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. We really appreciate it, and your wealth of knowledge that you've got, and the work that you're doing to help make this industry better, and the research that you're doing, and the papers you're writing, and all the things that you're creating to help with this. So if there's anything that we can do here
Yeah.
at Epic to support, please let us know. If it's just sharing messages and stuff, more than happy to do that. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and We might have another session, I think, because I think you've got a lot to share. So, uh, but appreciate your time.
All right, good. Angela, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I hope this conversation gave you something that you can take with you, whether it be a little bit of insight, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone. If it resonated with you, please share because we're better when we help build each other up. And remember that your experience, your story, and your journey, it all matters more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and never forget you are epic.